welcome to another edition of Heel or Face, the video series where I examine the career of a specific professional wrestler and determine whether or not that superstar worked better as a heel, bad guy, or as a babyface, good guy. And today's subject is a doozy. Paul White, the Big Show, the Giant, former WCW, ECW, well, ECW we'll put in quotation marks because that was the WWE version of ECW, but former WCW, ECW, and WWE champion, The Big Show. Quite the legend, known for his massive size and comparisons to Andre the Giant. Actually began his career playing Andre the Giant's long-lost son, a gimmick that I guess you could say he believably portrayed because of how big he was. You could believe that he was Andre's kid. And yeah, the reason that he's a doozy of a subject for a video series like this is because Big Show turning heel and face is one of those things that became a running gag. He switched back and forth so many times. I'm sure he's probably switched back and forth more than any wrestler in history. I haven't done all my research, but off the top of my head, I can't think of another wrestler that turned heel and face more than him. Even Luger, and Luger went through that as well. The ping-ponging back and forth between the two roles. And even when looking at Luger, I don't think even he comes anywhere near Big Show. But to highlight how crazy it could get for Paul White at times, let's look at his first year in the WWE now. He debuted February 14th at St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1999, started as a heel. He was an enforcer for Vince McMahon and the corporation. Then he turned face when he had a falling out with Vince at WrestleMania 15, less than a month after his debut, or like around a month after he debuted, somewhere around there. He stayed heel for a few weeks. Then he went face, and then a few months later he turned heel again to join up with Undertaker and form their tag team and become the tag team champions with him, and they could feud with the Rock and Sock Connection, all that. Then he turned babyface when Undertaker was taken off television and they did the angle where his dad died, and he had that amazing feud with Big Boss Man. He's like, the pay-per-view match they had aside, the storyline they had building into that match was one of the craziest things I've ever seen, and I honestly loved it because of how insane it got. But he turned face again and won the WWE Championship during that run. And then by the end of the year, in December, he'd already turned heel again to feud with The Rock. So here we are at his first year in the company. He's already switched more times than some people do in their entire careers. And it demonstrates a lack of consistency in writing, presenting, and booking his persona, his character. It's almost like they didn't know what to do with him, and they just needed him to fit whatever role they needed him to fit. So if you needed a big hero to, chokeslam a bunch of heels, he could do that. If you needed a heel that could be a challenge for the Hulk Hogan types of the world, like John Cena, for example, that would work as well. And they just kind of plugged him in wherever they needed him and wherever they can use him. But the downside of that, it felt like they were mishandling him as a talent because he couldn't get any consistency. He couldn't really sustain any kind of real momentum as a superstar, and that's very unfortunate because I think he's a talented guy. I think he's a better speaker than Andre ever was. I think Andre had a better look, but with his massive size and, he looked pretty damn impressive himself and could have good matches. So I personally felt like the handling of him was somewhat subpar because of that lack of consistency. And looking back on Big Show's entire career, when I think of like his sustained runs as either a heel or a face, the only ones that really come to mind are when he first got to WCW. They kept him a heel for about a year. Then he turned face when he left the NWO and feuded with Hogan, Nash, and had the tag team with Luger, and ended up being one of my favorite baby faces on the show. I actually really enjoyed the tag team with Lex Luger. I said that when I did my Nitro rewatch. I had to go back and kind of reevaluate the Giant as a presence in WCW, because as a kid I kind of was like, I didn't dislike the Giant, but I was kind of like, yeah, I get it. He's a big guy, 7-footer that chokeslams people. I get it. I've seen it before. And that was kind of my attitude. It's like, yeah, big man, I've seen it before. But looking back on it now and having rewatched it, I was like, wow, Giant was one of the best people on the show because he lived he embodied that gimmick, and it was just him. He was just a big, tall guy that chokeslam bitches. And when he went babyface, it was satisfying to see him do that to the NWO from time to time. So I really enjoyed him as a babyface in WCW. His other sustained run that I can think of off the top of my head was in late '02 when he joined up with Heyman, when Heyman turned on Lesnar and helped Big Show win the WWE title. I think he stayed heel after that until about 2005. He had gotten injured, and then when he came back, they made him babyface again. But that was a solid, 2.5 years as a heel, so that's cool. And, but generally speaking, he doesn't stay in one role very often. They switch him into whatever they need Big Show to be that month. It's like, if you need Cena to beat a giant and slay a dragon, feed him to Big Show. If you need, a heel faction to get their comeuppance, send out Big Show, and he can chokeslam some bitches. And that was kind of the mindset with him. Very unfortunate, because I felt like he was capable of more than that and should have been more of a special attraction. Again, very much like Andre was. And Andre was able to build a legacy for himself because of the consistency with his character. I mean, he was a babyface for years and years and years and years. Before turning on Hogan in '87. Then he got a 3-year heel run out of that, and then that was it. Andre got to end as a babyface by slapping Heenan around, but other than that, Andre didn't change all that much, but unfortunately Big Show did. And you just kind of had to, in regards to analyzing his career, you just kind of had to take what you're given, and it's hard to make a determination on which one he works better as a heel or face, because honestly, when given the ability to, and the time to develop those characters, he actually works pretty effectively in both roles. He's a better talker than Andre ever was, that's for sure. So he can cut a good heel promo, but he can also get sympathy. I think back to when he was feuding with Orton during the height of the Authority storyline, and when Stephanie was cutting that promo on him, that sad thing, it's like, well, you don't have a long life expectancy because of your size and all this other stuff. And you really felt bad for Big Show in that moment. I thought that worked exceptionally well. And an indicator of Big Show is capable of getting sympathy despite being so massive, and getting people on his side, again, despite being so massive. And you can have him go after some heels, and people will want to see the heels get beat up by this giant. So there are aspects to him that can definitely work in that regard. And I think my favorite, like I said, my favorite babyface run for him was that initial run in WCW. One of the big mistakes that they made creatively was in '98 when they turned him back heel and had him rejoin the NWO. I thought that completely derailed his persona and his character, and even the benefit of doing matches with Goldberg as a special attraction weren't as special as they could have been, because it felt like they just kind of got thrown together in random matches to pop the crowd once in a while and just get Goldberg to do the jackhammer. But I always felt like that heel turn for the Giant was a massive, massive mistake and completely derailed what was one of their best characters, I personally feel. Again, look at that tag team with Luger, look at Super Brawl 7. That was an amazing payoff to the Giant seeking redemption from WCW after being a pawn of the NWO, and Luger being the one guy to forgive him, and they ended up winning the tag team titles together. So that was really good stuff. I love the feud with Kevin Nash, despite the match they should have had not happening at Starrcade, and the pay-per-view match they ultimately had at Sold Out 98, resulting in him almost breaking his neck. I felt like the feud and storyline between the two Giants was really well done, and really showed that despite being green at this stage of his career, Big Show was capable of more than just standing there and looking menacing. He could actually help tell the stories verbally. And this is when his promos were starting to develop and get really good. So when I think of Paul White as a babyface, I instantly think back to WCW in 1997. He also had that memorable Bash to the Beach tag match with Dennis Rodman and Hogan on one side and him and Luger on the other side. That was a very, very fun match. And his best run as a Giant, because that was always surprisingly one of the issues with him in WWE. WWE, you think that Vince likes size, he likes big guys, and he gets Paul White. It's like, oh my God, this guy's going to get pushed to the moon, and they couldn't get it quite right with him, at least the first couple years or so, mainly because they just didn't book him well. And apparently Big Show had heat with certain guys, which I'm sure didn't help him, especially in that environment. I mean, when you've got heat with Taker, you're pretty much fucked. But the constant like back and forth with his persona, and even as a Giant, he would lose a lot. Like there were a lot of matches in those early years where Big Show would just lose, and I feel like, dude, he's massive. He's a Giant. He should be tearing through people like he did in WCW. I mean, his run as champion. Is he the only guy to take a world title from both Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan? He might be. I'm not sure. I'll have to double check that. But he beat Hogan. Well, he beat Hogan in his first match to win the world title, and then later on he dropped that title and got it back when he defeated Ric Flair in '96, and went on a pretty good run, having feuds and matches with Sting and Lex Luger, and doing the usual thing of just choke slamming bitches. I thought he did that pretty effectively, and that's the thing. I think Paul is just a naturally like charismatic and gifted kind of actor. When you listen to his promos and how believable he sounds on the mic, that he's able to pull off both roles of heel and face fairly effectively. Like I said, he can get sympathy if he's a face, and when he's a big, nasty, giant heel that's going to beat up the babyface, he can cut those promos too. Big Show seems like one of those guys that was just up for anything that WWE threw at him. Sometimes that involves getting, poop dropped on him by Eddie Guerrero thanks to a septic truck or whatever that was. Sometimes that involves him singing and dancing like a buffoon. But he was one of those guys that seemed like he was down for anything and show off his talents, and he is an immense talent. But I also feel like a lot of the ways they presented him kind of cut into his mystique as being a massive, unbeatable giant as well. He did have those matches with Brock Lesnar as a heel, which were some of the better matches of his career, I feel like, and they were kind of a natural fit for each other because Big Show, again, it was the ultimate example of the immovable force meeting the irresistible force meeting the immovable object. When you put those two together, that's the kind of magic they were able to create. But yeah, going back and forth here again, even in my mind, I'm kind of going back and forth. Did he work better as a face or did he work better as a heel? I will say that I feel like throughout the course of his career, more mileage was gotten out of him as a heel. Because it's an easy story to tell. You need a monster for the hero to beat. You just create a monster and have him tear through people. And Big Show was able to do that believably, even when they went through periods where they had him lose a lot, which kills the mystique of being a giant man. But Big Show was talented enough to kind of make you forget that. And he was one of those guys, you could plug him into almost anything, he could make something out of it work. I mean, Jericho, one of the best thrown together tag teams of all time. And I thought he did a great job, and him and Jericho had great chemistry working that tag team with each other, and they were heels, and they were very, very good at it. Like I said, the stuff with Lesnar was very good. When he first debuted as part of the Dungeon of Doom, which the less said about the Dungeon of Doom, the better, but he was the best part of that faction. This big, scary monster who was the son of Andre the Giant seeking revenge against Hulk Hogan for beating his dad. I mean, that was a pretty good... On paper, it's a pretty good storyline. I mean, you throw the Dungeon of Doom in there, it kind of ruins everything, but Big Show did his best to make that work, and it's like, look, this young kid being thrown an opportunity of a lifetime, and he did his best with it, all things considered. But yeah, generally speaking, I do feel like Paul White probably works better as a heel. I think he's tailor-made to be a heel, given his size. It's always easier to make the big guys the heels and, make them monsters and all this other stuff. And it is Halloween season. I like talking about monsters, so Paul White definitely fits in that regard. You put somebody like that up against like a Rey Mysterio, and it's like instant bully. Like the story practically writes itself. So yeah, even though I do feel like he was very good at both, and I could sit here and talk about the really good things that Big Show did as a babyface. I've already mentioned some of them, but like I said, there was a lack of consistency with Big Show's character, and when you look at his career as a whole, I feel like more mileage was gotten out of him as a heel, generally. Maybe if I was just looking at his WCW career, I'd be more willing to say he works better as a face, but when you look at his run in WWE, a lot of the best stuff he did, including, helping to elevate Lesnar, helping to elevate John Cena, the tag team with Jericho, various things like that showed that, like, Big Show was able to at least establish himself a little bit better as a heel. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Paul White is the first subject of the series where I said he works better as a heel than he does a face. So congratulations for that. And that will wrap up this video. Hopefully you were able to tolerate my rambling for at least a little bit. I'm actually filming this at 4:30 in the morning. I had a restless night and couldn't sleep. So just trying to knock this thing out while I can. But that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. And be on the lookout for more polls on Twitter and on this channel to help determine the next subject for heel or face, the fourth subject. This is an ongoing series that I'm actually really enjoying, so I'm looking forward to doing more of these. But like I said, there will be a poll on Twitter and there will be a poll on this channel, and the accumulated scores will be used to determine who will be the subject of the next video, so be on the lookout for that. Like I said, that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. If you want to follow me on Twitter, the link is in the description. Also, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the little bell icon so you get notified when I post new videos. But that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everyone, for watching, and I will see you all later.